Patch 9.19, the patch that Worlds will be played on, is only a week away. As a result, there are a lot of tentative changes upcoming for this patch. Today we are going to be covering everything that we do know of so far. Please keep in mind, as always, that these changes are tentative and subject to removal or adjustment before going to live servers. Now, if you haven't already, make sure to check out our website, GameLeap.com. There we have hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses, so if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. Our website is one of the best learning tools out there for League of Legends, so if you are looking to step up your play, consider signing up today. Now, starting off with the nerfs happening this patch, I know you guys are going to be excited for some of these nerfs coming through. First is going to be a nerf to the AP ratio on Karma's Q. Karma is a very dominant support in the laning phase, offering both poke with her Q and safety with her E. Her W allows her to easily facilitate ganks as well on top of both of these things. As a result, Riot is looking to tone down her ability to poke in lane so that she is more of a specialist as opposed to a jack of all trades. Tahm Kench is receiving an early nerf to his E. Instead of the E healing for 75% of gray health at all levels, it's now going to heal for 30 to 100% of gray health depending on his level. This means that early in the laning phase, it's going to be very hard to poke out Tahm Kench, whereas later on into the game, he's going to be able to access that healing a lot easier. Now, the gray health is not really the reason why Tahm Kench would be picked in a pro play scenario, so we may still see him at Worlds as a bit of a bailout mechanic for any carries. Tahm Kench in the pro scene is often used as a replacement for a QSS. If you are playing an ADC that you don't want to be building a QSS on, then you can draft Tahm Kench and completely forego having to build it. The slow on Yuumi's Q is going to be gutted this upcoming patch. Yuumi is very oppressive, both in solo queue and in pro play, and is oftentimes just banned out in pro play. These nerfs by Riot are an attempt to ensure that Yuumi does not reach 100% ban ratio at Worlds. This, however, will also help tune down her strength in solo queue, as she is a little bit too strong in solo queue as well. Now, the next nerf is to Gragas, which is one that I don't really understand. Gragas' presence in pro play is very low and pretty much non-existent at this point in Korea. Since the Koreans are typically the ones defining the world's meta, I don't really foresee Gragas being played at all or even banned in the world's meta. Now, perhaps these nerfs are aimed at solo queue, but Gragas' current performance in solo queue is pretty acceptable, so I don't really see why they would be going for that either. Pretty questionable nerfs here, and if they do end up going through, they will be hurting his jungle clear pretty significantly. Sejuani is going to be receiving nerfs to her passive. Now, Sejuani is a pretty high priority pick for the jungle at the moment. She sees a lot of play both in the pro scene and in solo queue, so these nerfs are looking to address that. While these nerfs are a good starting point, I don't foresee them being large enough to completely kick her out of the meta, however they may knock her down a notch. I definitely think that Sejuani will still be seeing some play at Worlds, if not remaining one of the priority picks for the jungle. Sylas is receiving some adjustment to his armor. Now, these are some really good nerfs to Sylas, since he was originally intended to be a strong pick into mages, not into AD bruisers. This should remove his ability to succeed as a pick into most AD matchups. These nerfs are similar to the nerfs that we saw to Kassadin a while back, which did definitely help out. This should turn him into more of a niche pick as opposed to a priority pick that is very safe to blind pick. He still will be strong, and he still will be seeing play at the Worlds tournament most likely, but he probably won't be used as a blind pick anymore. His solo queue presence shouldn't really be affected by this at all. He's still going to be just as strong, and this problem can be solved by itemizing a little bit of early armor. Now, the final nerf so far for the patch is going to be to Pantheon. This is again going to be a very small nerf, and I believe these changes are more targeted towards ADC Pantheon. Pantheon has been seen in the bot lane by pro duos. The other thing that points to this targeting bot lane Pantheon specifically is the AD by level. Changing the AD ratio to increase the more levels that you get targets bot lane Pantheon because bot laners are duo lane, meaning they get less EXP than solo laners. Solo lane Pantheon won't be affected nearly as much because magic damage isn't quite as abundant in the top lane, and he's going to be getting more EXP. Since he gets that extra EXP for being solo, he's going to be higher level, meaning he's not going to feel that nerf quite as much. Now, moving our way to some exciting buffs coming this next patch. Hopefully these buffs allow for some exciting and unique new picks to pop up at Worlds. It is always exciting to watch a meta develop at Worlds, and hopefully the large amount of buffs going through this patch really helps facilitate that. Now, starting off, the first buff is to Mordekaiser, which is a little bit interesting. While Mordekaiser doesn't have the highest presence in pro play, he's certainly not a weak pick. He's used very frequently when you want your top lane to 1v2 while you are able to focus on the bot half of the map. Since this is a win condition that most teams are very comfortable playing around, he doesn't really get very many bans, and he's only picked situationally. This means that he has implied presence without having raw presence. His pick and ban ratio in pro play isn't very high, but teams are always thinking, is Mordekaiser a good pick here, yes or no? On the other hand, teams are also thinking, if they pick Mordekaiser here, am I still able to utilize this pick? Now, maybe Riot does know this and they're just looking to cement Mordekaiser as a Worlds pick already. The buff is small, but he's already in a good spot, so we will most likely be seeing even more of Mordekaiser than we already were. Moving on, the next change is to Sion. Sion is just getting a flat buff to his shield. Now, I don't think this buff is big enough to see him at Worlds at all, but maybe it will help him out a little bit in solo queue. This buff is going to be a lot more noticeable early on into the game, and then once you've scaled later into the game, you're probably not going to notice it nearly as much. Ornn has a really fantastic buff coming. He's going to be accessing his passive one level early for his teammates. Obviously, this buff is good for him because he can deck out his teammates even earlier on into the game. This buff tells me that Riot is paying close attention to Ornn, because typically on champions your power spikes are going to happen at levels 6, 9, 13, 16, and 18. I really do have to commend Riot for this change because it is deviant of the way they typically balance champions and is a creative solution to some of the problems that Ornn is facing at the moment. For all of you Riven mains out there, and I know there are a lot of you, rejoice because Riven is getting some buffs this patch. Her E is going to be lower cooldown, meaning she's going to have access to that shield a lot more often. This allows her to play all stages of the game more aggressively, something that Riven really likes. This is a change that for sure is only targeted at solo queue, and we should be seeing a lot more success for those of you who do play Riven out there. Fiora is getting the most insane buff this patch. If these changes go through, she might be completely broken. The change is that her Q is going to be able to hit towers, and her second auto from her E is now going to be able to crit towers. This means that Fiora is going to turn into the ultimate split-pushing, tower-killing machine. On top of this, her Q's also going to be able to hit wards as well. Fiora's mobility is going to go through the roof. As long as her Q functions the same on towers and wards as it does on normal creeps or champions and reduces that cooldown, she's going to be able to dash absolutely everywhere. She's going to be dealing more damage to towers, she's going to be able to kill wards faster. All around, this is just a fantastic buff for Fiora. Her lane phase was already pretty strong if you played it well, and if you are able to kill somebody, you're going to be able to take a lot more plates than you were before. Now, a similar change is to Rek'Sai, and her unburrowed Q is now going to work on towers. This means that she also is going to melt towers. See, before you were getting neither the additional attack damage nor the AoE on the ability. With using her unburrowed Q on the tower, she's going to be able to clear the minions while hitting the tower at the same time. All around, it's a pretty huge buff that will encourage Rek'Sai to actually push towers instead of just leaving after pushing the minion wave. On top of this, she's getting an additional 3 base armor, which is always so good for junglers. Junglers take the most damage early on into the game, so they use armor the best. Moving on to our next jungler, Xin Zhao is receiving a buff to his passive and his Q. These buffs are pretty small, so they really should only be affecting his jungle clear and his sustain in the jungle. He may be able to do a full clear a few seconds faster and get to fights a few seconds faster, but other than that, it's not really going to help him in a fight against other champions. Now, a very similar change is to Graves, who is getting an additional 3 base AD. This is pretty terrifying because the last time that they made an adjustment this small to Graves, he went from being completely broken to being garbage. If a change this small really is that important to Graves, he might be going back to being the best jungler in the game. Bringing up the tail end of the jungler, Zac is going to be receiving a buff to his passive. For each additional point in his ultimate, his passive is going to heal him an additional 1%. This just means he's going to be able to sustain a lot more later on into the game. You're also going to be able to ping the cooldown on the revive portion of your passive and communicate with your teammates when that is going to be coming back up. While these buffs are definitely a step in the right direction for Zac, I don't think that they're fully going to solve his problems and push him into the meta. Moving our way to the mid lane, TF does have some buffs planned. He's going to be getting more attack speed from his E, and the empowered card is going to be dealing more damage. This buff is a lot more helpful to a DTF than it is to APTF, but it definitely still helps APTF as well. Veigar's getting a buff to his E, which is going to be lowering the cooldown at max rank by 2 seconds. This is typically the ability that Veigar maxes second, meaning at level 3 he's going to be able to pick a lot more often. These buffs are actually pretty big, and they help out both mid lane Veigar and support Veigar for those of you who do play that. Now, we all know that it is the Worlds patch, and what would a Worlds patch be without a buff to Orianna? Her ultimate is getting a completely nutty buff, increasing both the base damage and the ratio on the ability. I am really excited to see Orianna at Worlds, and I really hope some teams whip her out. Heimerdinger is getting some buffs to his turrets, both his ultimate turret and his normal turrets, and his E. These are some pretty nice buffs, but Heimer is so niche of a pick that this really is only going to be affecting the Heimerdinger mains. I don't think that these buffs are going to be big enough to turn him into a meta champion that a lot of people play, but for those of you who do enjoy Heimerdinger, rejoice because your boy is going to be a little bit stronger this patch. Cassiopeia has a buff plan to increase the damage on her E, specifically her empowered E. These buffs are a little bit bigger than they would first appear because her E is a very spammable ability. I don't think it will make her all too popular in solo queue since her skill ceiling is so high that very few people play her. But similar to Orianna, what I hope comes from this is seeing at least some Cassiopeia at Worlds because I think she is a very entertaining champion to watch. Vayne is getting a buff to her ultimate, a change that I am sure Uzi is going to appreciate, and perhaps we can see his famed Vayne at Worlds. Ashe's Q is once again going to fully reset the auto instead of doing the clunky thing where it would only kind of reset the auto. Her passive is also going to slow for more early on into the game. This will definitely help her in solo queue, and since she was already being seen a very small amount in pro play, perhaps she will actually be picked up more often during the Worlds tournament. Blitzcrank is getting additional range on his Q as well as one more empowered auto from his ultimate. This is a good change for all you Blitzcrank players out there. For those of you who play against Blitzcrank frequently, you are going to have to learn the new range, which will be a little bit jarring at first. Annie's E has another buff planned, increasing the movement speed even more and lowering the cooldown. This means she's going to be able to roam more, get out of more sticky situations, and do it more frequently. The final change planned for this upcoming patch is going to be to Aatrox. Aatrox's Q is going to be dealing more damage to minions the later he scales into the game. This means that come mid and late game, he's going to be able to shove out those minion waves without struggling helplessly at pushing it quickly. That's about all that we have for you on the upcoming changes to the Worlds patch. If you are as excited as I am about Worlds, then let us know by leaving a comment down below on the player that you are most excited to see play. As I'm sure all of you already know, we're looking to do a lot of Worlds content, and we might just cover that player in an upcoming video. For those of you who haven't already, make sure to check out our website, GameLeap.com. There we have hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses, so if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check it out using the link in the description below. I've checked out a lot of the stuff on there personally, and I can honestly say that it is all very high quality. If you are looking to improve your play, our website is one of the best learning tools out there for you. Sign up today and start improving your play. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.